What's going on, guys? So we have the front of the F450 in the shop. This is our new FLOG Bumper, which is on the front of this thing, which is absolutely amazing. I've been doing a few little tweaks and modifications to where the control box is and how I mounted it. The folks over at CNS who installed all of this did a great job, an absolutely fantastic job. But I wanted to use some different hardware that is less likely to strip out if I need to remove anything. They used some stainless steel fasteners with some Phillips head, and every time you tighten or loosen Phillips head screws, I think most people know, you get one step closer to stripping it out, or at least, you know, wallowing out the Phillips head portion of it. So I switched everything over to grade 8 fasteners and stuff that I can get a wrench on or an impact driver on if I need to adjust. So all of this stuff is very securely mounted. I also put a piece of protection right here. This is a rubberized tape material, very similar to like Gorilla Tape, but a little bit thicker. The reason for that is because the screws on the bottom of this control box, every time you remove it, it kind of mars up the powder coat finish a little bit, and I didn't want that to happen. But the point of today's video is going to be one that a lot of people have asked about, or at least subtly commented about every time I've showcased this bumper and this winch. So let's talk about that. Hang tight, I'll be right back. So look what I've added to the front of my FLOG bumper. So believe it or not, this black oak LED light bar I have had sitting around for like 6 years. I got this along with a slightly larger one when I got my red F450. I only installed one of them, and this thing has been sitting in a shelf in my garage and now my shop forever. And I was like, you know what? Let's mount it. Let's get this thing put on there. It works flawlessly. Still a huge fan of black oak LED products, even though I haven't done a collaboration with them in like 7+ years. The light bar has absolutely no issues at all. I think it looks really good on the front of the truck, and it definitely gives me additional light output whenever we are going down dark roads in South Texas at night. Okay, so if you've been watching the videos on this FLOG bumper that I now have, this is the full wrap. It is a very, very big bumper, and I think folks who originally saw it, some folks, not all, specifically ones who left negative comments, probably left them because of this upper part. The lower part right here, I don't think people, mind too much, but the upper part some people might think is a little massive. One difference between this bumper when I saw it on their website versus what it looked like on the truck is this area right here wasn't this meshed material, or wasn't this kind of honeycomb looking material. It was open, and you could see the front of the fog lights, and I kind of prefer that. I kind of wish I went back and had them just open up these ends right here, which they are capable of doing. This was just a design preference. Whenever we were looking at it, we thought that this might be a cool, stealthier way to show the fog lights. But yeah, if I went back, I'd probably just have these opened up so you could see the actual fog and floodlights in there versus having them covered up like that. I don't think it looks bad. I'm actually on the fence about possibly blacking out part of that area right there, so it does look like it's a little bit more open and stealthy versus seeing all of the holes right there. Leave a comment. I'd love to know your feedback on that, though. Now, when it comes to winches, on big trucks like this, specifically with very mild all-terrain tires. These are not what I would consider to be like off-road tires, knobby tires, anything like that. You see a lot of those trucks driving around down here. Most of those folks, or at least I think probably a percentage of them, are oil field based employees that go out and they have to get a truck that gets them to their job site, out at the rig they're working on, and because of that they need those types of tires. On my truck, I don't take it out to oil rigs. I don't do that kind of stuff with it, so I don't really want those tires. I don't specifically like the way that they look, even though I don't have anything against folks who put them on their trucks, other than the fact that they stick out real wide, and I imagine every time you go through a puddle it sprays the entire side of your truck. But for me, I really like these tires. These are the newest generation of the Continental tires, the HDRs, and they are a really good tire. They're super quiet. I don't have enough miles on them yet to really give you my perception on how well they will wear, but so far I am very impressed with them. They're much better than the tires that I removed. Actually, the 2 generations of Continental tires that I removed from my previous truck. So hopefully the compound is a little different. That was kind of one of the things that they bragged about, was going to a different, better compound that doesn't chip, doesn't give you the problems that some of the previous generations might have suffered with. So I'm very optimistic about those. that said, let's talk about winches in big heavy trucks like this. So F450 truck has a GVWR of 14,000 pounds. It's a class 3 truck, which means Ford intentionally kept this truck at 14,000 pounds to keep it a class 3 truck, so it would be something the normal person could go and purchase for the most part, right? There are some states that might have some restrictions against that, but I think most people now have figured out a way to get these things registered in just about every state, I imagine. If you haven't been able to, leave a comment below. I'd love to know what your state restrictions are and why you might be having challenges with that. That said, this has an 18,000 pound super winch in the front of it. The bumper is rated to handle it. It is a really, really cool mounting technique that I've never seen on a bumper before. Most bumpers, you kind of put it against the front. You have 2 bolts on one side, 2 bolts on the other side, and then they put kind of a sleeve that goes over the front of your frame rail to allow those bolts to go in. On this one, it has the sleeve, but then it has these 2 giant grade 8 bolts that drop in from the top through those holes, and this goes in place and they pin in place. So you're dealing with much greater shear force, which is actually better. So the chance that you're going to shear off a grade 8 bolt in this application is probably much lower than breaking the top of a bolt head off by using smaller bolts. So again, very, very innovative way that they came up with mounting the FLOG bumper to the front of the Super Duty. Now, that said, a lot of folks have left comments saying, you know, what situation would you ever be in with an F450 with semi, you know, all-terrain highway tires that you would need something like this? Well, first and foremost, if we talk about the bumper, there are a lot of scenarios where a bumper can really save you and keep you out of trouble if you are on rural roads, if you're on interstates or highways or county roads or farm to market roads, to where a hog or a deer or something jumps out in front of you and you hit it. I've had so many friends of mine, I'm not even kidding you, that have had their vehicles completely disabled. Super Duties, 2500 HDs, Ram 3500s, that had no protective front to them. They hit a deer, it completely destroyed the front of their vehicle, and their vehicle is disabled on the side of the road, coolant dripping all over the place, and the vehicle no longer able to run. Now, that is a very, very, very real scenario down here in Texas. It happens all the time. I don't know of many people who can probably go on, a 4-hour drive and not see at least one dead carcass on the side of the road from where somebody has hit it with a vehicle. And if you're in a car, sometimes the deer can actually roll up into the vehicle and get inside of your vehicle, and it can become a life-threatening hazard at that point. So from a protection perspective, something like this, you hit a deer, you hit something in the road, it's less likely to disable your vehicle. That's probably the single biggest attribute of having something like this. Having the full wrap simply means that more of the front of your vehicle is protected in that event. So if I just had the bumper down here, which was actually something I was going to do, but my wife actually said, you know what, if you're going to do this, let's go full wrap. Let's protect the whole front. Wouldn't you hate to be in a scenario where you have a real tall deer or a buck and you hit that thing and it destroys the grill, even though the bumper may not have been damaged that much? So let's go with something a little bit more substantial, something that's going to provide you more protection. This portion over here does provide a tremendous amount of protection, but this would be what would be considered the brush guard area of it. If you're going through certain ranch areas, which we do, we have a lot of family out in King Ranch. When we go and visit them, there are some times where you want to take off with the family, you want to go shoot some guns, you want to go out in the woods, you want to go out in the fields, and you are going through a lot of brush and trees. And I know a lot of folks think that I baby my vehicles, but if you actually saw the amount of stuff that I subjected my previous F450 through, you would be surprised. I hardly ever wash my vehicles. That's probably something that I should do more. Found a car wash that actually can fit a dually in it, so I take it there more than I ever have probably. But my last truck, it probably got a bath about once every 6 months. Even though it looked nice and clean, but that's mainly because of what you're seeing on camera and the magic of editing. That said, I don't baby my vehicles. absolutely do not. I don't wash them very often. I don't care about little things that may happen to them if I get scratches, little things like that. I'm not that worried about that kind of stuff. Now, I don't want some big dent in the truck. I mean, you guys saw when I dented my tailgate in a previous vehicle. I didn't want to keep it there. I don't want my truck to look ugly, but at the same time, though, I'm not one of those people that's super nitpicky about, you know, brush and trees and limbs scratching the side or scratching the top. I just really don't worry too much about that stuff. And the current owner of the truck, the red truck that I sold, the F450, probably can attest to that. It wasn't in immaculate shape in terms of the paint condition, but it wasn't what I would consider to be worn out or beaten up by any sense. That said, back to the winch. So we have an 18,000 pound Tiger Shark from Superwinch in the front of this thing. You see I have my Factor 55. This is actually something I removed from my previous winch that I had on my previous truck long before I sold it. I went to the Epic winch on the front of it, or the Epic hook from Warn. But this is a really cool closed system. Just safer. You can use shackles, soft shackles, all sorts of different things, and you don't have to worry about a hook coming loose, any of that stuff. I do have a hook just in case I need it. But I know a lot of people are going to say he's finally getting to the topic of this video. The reason why a winch like this is super important, it really comes down to the fact of what situation could you get your truck into that you need to get it out of? Or what situation could somebody else have gotten their vehicle or something into that you need to help move it, pull it off, or lift it up? During Hurricane Michael in Florida, during Hurricane Harvey down here in Texas, during a number of tropical storms and tropical fronts that have come through, we used the Warn winch in my previous truck. We removed countless numbers of trees. We removed several vehicles. We removed objects. We did a lot. We used it during part of the beach cleanup program where we were removing heavy debris from the ground. We used it a lot. So you can use it for helping others and extracting others from bad situations. But when it comes to a truck like this, primarily, it's peace of mind. It's the fire extinguisher approach, right? You don't want to use it, but it's great to know that you have it in case you need it, right? Better to have it, not need it, that whole saying. Everyone knows that. But the reality really holds true for folks like Chad and Tara over at Changing Lanes. They have an F450. They have a big Grand Design Momentum fifth wheel, and they got stuck going up their own driveway because it was a pretty dang steep incline. The road had recently gotten wet and it was loose. I think it had gotten wet, but I know that the gravel was loose and they were not able to make it up their driveway. They actually had to call a wrecker company to come out, send a pretty significant, tow truck out there to help get them out, and it put them in a really, really bad bind. And, Chad had reached out to me. We did a full video collaboration on this, and he said, what could we have done different? And I said, ultimately, the only thing that you really could have done once you found yourself in that situation is have a winch. That's really it. If you had had a winch on the front of your vehicle, you could have anchored yourself to something. You could have pulled yourself up and gotten yourself out of that situation, hopefully. I'm not going to say you can do it 100% of the time, but with enough trees around you, some tree saver straps, enough pulleys, or, you have enough of a chance to get yourself out by having this type of recovery gear on the front of your vehicle in the event you need it, that it makes sense to have it. Now, we don't have a lot of huge inclines here in South Texas, right? If we go to San Antonio, over to Austin, those areas, yes. But we do have a beach here, and there are plenty of times where I have taken my vehicle out to the beach, and these very, very, semi-all-terrain highway tires just don't perform well in sand when you have a very heavy truck that are sitting on top of them. And having a winch with a sand anchor could be incredibly important. And I have a 10,000 pound sand anchor in the bed of my truck, which is designed to essentially anchor into sand whenever you're pulling yourself. It digs itself deeper so you can pull yourself out. And those are very real scenarios where a winch on a truck like this could come in really, really handy. So whenever we take an RV out to the beach, the RV acts as an anchor sometimes. It creates a situation to where the tires in the back can't get the traction they need to pull the RV to get yourself moving. And having a winch can get you out of those situations. Again, think of it like a fire extinguisher, right? If you don't need to use it, that's usually a good thing. If you do need to use it, you're sure glad that you have it, and it's going to be there to help you. But I don't know many people who would say, you know what, I don't need a fire extinguisher because the chances I'm going to have a fire are so slim, I don't need that peace of mind. I don't need that precaution. For me, the minute we wrapped up this collaboration and I revealed all this and I saw the winch, I saw how it's all wired in, I saw what it's capable of, I had this calming effect pour over me. I'm not even kidding you guys. I told my wife, I was like, you know what? I actually feel a lot better about the truck now because the places that we sometimes take it, I don't worry as much if we're going to get stuck. And that to me is absolutely worth it. That to me is the reason why this is on the front of the truck. We have the protection, we have the safety, we have the recovery, we have the self-recovery of a heavy-duty winch inside of a heavy-duty bumper that I think looks absolutely fantastic on the front of the truck. But that's what it comes down to, getting yourself out of situations that you may end up in and having the tools to do it so you don't have to pay someone else $1,500 to $2,000 to use their equipment to do it that you're never going to be able to use again unless you pay that fee again. Anyways, leave a comment below. I'd love to know what your thoughts are, regardless of if you love the bumper or hate the bumper, or I guess let's say regardless of if you agree or disagree with me putting this on the front of my truck, I'd love your feedback. You know, does my video make sense? Is it something that you all can understand and say, well, that does make sense? Or does it still leave questions in the air on if this is something you would do to your own vehicle? Do you need to go with an 18,000-pound winch? No. You could probably get away with a 12,000-pound winch with enough snatch blocks to get you out of any situation, simply because every time you double your line, you essentially double your power, even though you cut your speed in half. But most of the time, slow is better, right? Now, again, this is something that not everyone is willing to do, not everybody wants to do, not everybody can do. But if you have the capability of doing it, it may get you out of a situation that you find yourself in. Leave a comment below. If you haven't had a chance, please take a moment, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up. We'll talk to you again very soon.